if the beard were to go, 100% you got to rename the show.
JPJ from the Two Beards podcast on Love Wrestling. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So if we take this back, my friend, where do you first discover wrestling as a fan?
Oh man. Well, the first wrestling I can remember viewing or seeing was actually, it was the 1992 SummerSlam in Wembley. Yeah, so I was probably, not to give out my age or anything like that, but I was probably 5, 6, or 7 at the time. I was a younger kid, and my grandfather when we used to go over there on the weekends, on Saturdays, he would be watching the Saturday afternoon wrestling shows. And I just saw it in the background. I really had no interest. I'm sure I asked him whatever questions a normal 5 or 6 year old would be like, what's that? Stuff like that. But I didn't pay any attention to it. But I vividly remember the SummerSlam of 1992. I don't know if it was we were at a family thing and it was on, or I don't know how, but like that's the first real event that I remember like falling in love with wrestling about. The main event obviously being Bret Hart and the Bulldog, and it was just, that's an all-timer, right? And but like my dude when I was younger, and especially at that time, you're talking early 90s, was the Macho Man. He's my number one forever. But like I remember, that's when he wore the tassels and the very colorful jackets and the cool sunglasses and all that stuff. And as a 6 or 7 year old kid, you see that and you're like, oh my God, like this guy's like the man. And I just remember he fought Warrior for the title at that event, and Flair and Mr. Perfect were involved. And like, I just remember that was the first time I was like, wow, what is this wrestling stuff? And it was this huge event. The Legion of Doom opened the show coming down on the motorcycles. And it was just like, what is this?
Knowing what we know now, that makes me laugh.
Yeah.
The fact that Hulk was supposedly high off his nut and then spent like 2 months, I think it was, with the Hell's Angels in England. That always makes me laugh. But I do apologize for interrupting you.
Oh, no, it's good. No, and I just remember, and it has so many iconic, like Undertaker versus Kamala in the casket match, and like there's just so many iconic moments in that event. And being, like I said, being a young kid who just kind of was saw it for the first time, or was like, what is this? Like that just stuck out to me, and I feel like I've been watching almost ever since. I took a few years off in my like early 20s. I took a few years off, but other than that, I've been kind of hooked since.
So the wrestling you discovered was very character based. So what I am always curious to know from my guests is when it comes to discovering wrestling, if you discovered today's wrestling as a child, do you think you'd be into it as much? But if you discover, and then to flip the question, if you discovered the wrestling you discovered as a child today, but you had no prior wrestling knowledge, do you think you'd be into it?
I feel like if I was a young kid, there's certain things, like I look at a person like Orange Cassidy, right? And I'm like, I could 100% see kids being in love with that character, or I look at somebody like a Ricochet and I'm like, if I was at a wrestling show or I was watching wrestling with an older brother, older sister, parent, whatever, and I saw Ricochet on there and he was doing those moves that he can do, like I would fall in love with that guy. You know what I mean? But I do feel like wrestling as a whole today is much more sport. There's less characters like that. You know what I mean? And as a kid falling in love with wrestling, when I fell in love with wrestling, it was all character based. That was the early 90s of WWE, where everybody was something. Somebody was working taxes in the IRS. There was a garbage man. There was a farmer. Like everybody was something. You know what I mean? So I feel like as a kid, in those times, if wrestling was more athletic based, which I feel like it is now, as opposed to, like, don't get me wrong, there's great characters, but like it's just not the way it used to be. I feel like it would have been harder for me to it would probably have been harder for me to like immediately fall in love with it like I did when you see these larger than life characters and they're superheroes to you at that point. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, now it would be like, oh, this guy looks like, you know, a regular guy. You know, he talks and stuff, but like there's no character. He's just really good in the ring. I feel like as a younger person, it would be a little bit harder for me to get into that.
Yeah.
However, I feel like now, are you talking like now, if I would like currently constituted, if now there were still so many character based things like there were back then?
Yeah. So like no, but then specifically those characters, say like you discovered Macho Man,
Oh,
Hogan, people like that.
I would have felt differently. I would have felt
now.
differently about Hogan. I would have felt differently about Hogan.
Yeah, definitely.
Not for the obvious reasons why people feel differently about Hogan, because there's plenty of reasons why you should. But if you watch Hulk Hogan wrestle, even when he was in the height of good guy, red and yellow, say your prayers, take your vitamins, he always wrestled like a heel. He was always back rakes, eye rakes, poking. Like he did heel stuff, even though he was the all-American good guy. So I feel like as an adult, I would feel differently about Hogan, but like Macho Man and Mr. Perfect was another one who I love. He's like on a top 5 list for me always. Like those type of guys, I think I would have fallen in love with at any age, especially the Macho Man. I think top to bottom, in my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, he is my GOAT. I just think top to bottom, in ring, character wise, could be a great bad guy, great good guy. He just had everything. Obviously his promos were insane, some of them, but like could talk. Like he had everything you ever wanted. So I think I would have fallen in love with the Macho Man at any point. At any point.
Talking of Macho Man, which promotion, if it could happen, would you like to see him appearing in today?
I mean, I think I would still want him to go back to WWE. Just for the sheer magnitude of it. And, you know, I would be happy seeing him anywhere. But I think WWE, just for, you know, how big they are, where they can go, the kind of everything that would come with it, like as far as like, you know, graphically and just how everything would look, I would want him to be in WWE, but I would not complain. I think that like the Madness Macho Man, the WCW Madness Macho Man, I feel like that doesn't get as much respect as it should. Like I feel like he was very good in that stretch, and the Madness Macho Man was good. His feud with DDP is like a really, really good feud.
Really good match.
Yeah, there's like some really good stuff in there. And I just feel like a lot of people, when it comes to Macho Man, I feel like a lot of people go, oh yeah, there was the WWF, WWE stuff where he was great, and then the WCW stuff is kind of, you know? And it's kind of like, no, like when he was Madness Macho Man, like he was very good. Like he was still top of his game, like one of the best people in that company. So, but I would say I would want him to come back to you know, if obviously he's no longer with us, but if he was, I would love to see him kind of come back to WWE, and I think he'd be near the top. He'd be at the top. So
I think so. So if we move on into your fandom, I was trying to find a segue there. It's something I need to work on, but I'm trying to find a segue, but I couldn't find one. But if we move on in your fandom, you mentioned in your 20s you took some time away from wrestling. What happened to make that happen?
You know, I had finished college. I was working full time. I was, you know, when you're 20, 21, 22, like I still paid attention to wrestling, but it was definitely a part of my life where if I was getting invited out to go do something on a Monday night, I wasn't going to be like, well, I need to stay home and watch 3 hours of wrestling, or I need to stay home and watch 2 hours of wrestling, you know, or if it was, I think SmackDown at the time was on Thursday still. It was on Thursday. So
what year are we talking about, if you don't
know? It was, I want to say it was right after WrestleMania 21. I want to say.
Okay. So
and then I came back
2005-ish.
Yeah, around that. And I was born in 1985. So I'm 20, becoming a young adult, just in the States, just becoming like legally I could drink and go out and, experience nightlife and do things like that. And like, I was, a young 20 something trying to figure out who the hell I was going to be and what the hell I wanted to do and all this stuff. And wrestling was still a core part of my life at that point. Like I still went on the wrestle zones and I paid attention and knew what was happening. Just if things came up and there were times for me to go hang out with my friends or go out or go on a date or meet somebody new or stuff like that, like I wasn't like, no, it's wrestling night. So now if people ask me like on a Monday, like, hey, you want to go grab a beer? I'm like, can we do it on Tuesday? Like I watched something on Monday. You know what I mean? Like now I'm more likely to be like, actually,
is that, I'm really curious to know this. And again, I keep interrupting.
No, it's good. It's good.
Like, is that out of actually wanting to watch it? Or is that out of, I have a podcast that I have to do that I need to talk about?
I would say the last 5 or 6 weeks in WWE, it's definitely been wanting to watch it. I feel like I'm very optimistic and like I look forward to watching Raw and SmackDown again. I would say when it came to WWE over the last handful of years, it did feel like a chore from time to time. AEW though, and like I'm a big proponent of AEW. They kind of revitalized. I was always watching wrestling the whole time, and don't get me wrong, like there are things that WWE did even under Vince and in the previous regime that I liked. I'm a wrestling fan, so they did things I liked. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything they did was terrible and everything Triple H does is great. Like I get it, but for me, I feel like AEW kind of revitalized my wrestling love because it did feel like for a long time it was like, all right, well, WWE's the only company in town, really, on United States, North American TV. Like you can find the other ones, but WWE's like right there for you,
Yeah.
And now AEW is, which is nice. But I always felt I kind of felt like I still watch this. I've been watching these things my whole life, so it's kind of programmed into my schedule of watching this wrestling. But like many others, I know I'm not alone. Like it got monotonous. It was, rematch after rematch after rematch. The booking, you could tell that they really didn't give a crap about. And it was just like, so it kind of was turning into, all right, well, I need to at least pay attention because we're going to talk about this on Thursday night. And I need to know what I'm talking about because I'm not one of those people that's like not going to half-ass watch a show or not watch a show and then try to, you know what I mean? Like I want to be informed so I can, whether I like it or not, or I'm critiquing it or I'm saying I love it, like, I want to make sure that I am watching it and paying attention to what's going on so I can give my full honesty on my opinion of what I'm doing,
Yeah.
But I would say I've always loved wrestling. So there was always a part of me that loved sitting down and just watching wrestling. I just right now, currently, I am more optimistic about wrestling as a whole than I have been in a while. And I know I'm not alone in that either. I know we're all kind of
you're
feeling
definitely
that right
not,
now.
because I agree as well.
Yeah. So I would say the last couple months has kind of not felt like, oh, I have a podcast, I have to make sure I watch this. Like now I'm like a lot of us, I'm watching, waiting to see what new storyline they're going to do or who's coming back or this or that. Now it feels like it did when I was a kid watching wrestling. Like when I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, like becoming a teenager, that was right in the heart of the Attitude Era. So like that was when wrestling was, you had everybody there. So like, I feel like I'm getting to that point where I'm enthusiastic about the product like I was back then again, which is good because for a long time I felt like I was like, am I ever going to be excited about like stuff like that again? Or is this going to be it? Like, is this just what they're going to do forever? And now it's like, okay, like, oh, this person just came back. Oh, this, oh, that. All right, cool. This is cool. I need to watch on Mondays because I'm going to miss something if I don't. And yeah, so I feel like now I'm back to being a fan as opposed to somebody who covers wrestling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned that there about going from maybe a fan to just someone that covers wrestling. So how does that transition happen? I know you talked about the monotonous and monopoly of wrestling not helping it, but do you remember the moment where you were like, I'm just doing this because I have a podcast?
I don't think it was like a specific moment or anything like that, but there were definitely nights where I'm watching Raw and I'm seeing the 17th rematch between Bobby Lash. I'm just using two wrestlers for examples. Like I'm not, but I'm seeing the 13th match between Bobby Lashley and Kevin Owens in the last 2.5 months. And it's like, you're sitting there and you're like, what about this is, what haven't I seen here? Like, what about this is going to make me excited to watch this? You know what I mean? And like, I felt like that's where we were going all the time, is it was just rematches. And then whenever there would be a match that I was like, oh, wow, they're having that match tonight, I would be excited about that match. Then that match would be 5 minutes, and then there's a distraction and a roll up or a DQ or some other BS or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, the one match that I was excited to see, and it felt like that was happening a lot. So I felt like when I was watching Raw and things like that, it was becoming that, where I was like, hey, like I would probably be watching this anyway, but I feel like I am watching this strictly because I have to talk about it tomorrow, or I have to talk about it on Thursday, as opposed to like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this on Thursday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So on them weeks that you do feel, or did, or maybe still do on certain occasions, you do feel like, I've got to watch this because I have a podcast.
Yeah.
What do you do to sort of power through and remind yourself, like, it's okay to watch this, even for a podcast? Yeah,
I mean, I feel like in life, I try my best to be optimistic, or look at the good side of things. Like my shoot job, I manage people. That's what I do. So like I manage a ton of people. So like for me, I'm always operating looking the best, like looking for the best in people, looking for the best in things and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I've always told myself, like, hey, if you're watching a show of wrestling that's not a great show of wrestling and it's just a brutal show to watch, like, is that truly the worst thing that could be happening? You know what I mean? Like, you could be literally working at a job you hate, or you could be, life's tough, man. Like a lot of things, we could be going through a lot of stuff. If I'm really going to sit here and like be angry that I have to watch a wrestling show, like I'm taking it too seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so I never really viewed it as powering through. I more viewed it as, man, I wish that this show was better. I wish the show was better. That, not as opposed as like, man, I wish I didn't have to watch this show. Because at the end of the day, watching bad wrestling to me is still better than a lot of things. You know what I mean? So,
and something someone told me recently was, if it's bad, it gives us something to talk about. If it's good, it gives us something to talk about. The only thing that we struggle to talk about is when it's boring.
Exactly. And it's the same thing, like, when they used to ask Roman Reigns, who was the babyface at the time, like, how's it feel though when you're getting booed all the time? And he's like, hey, a good reaction, a bad reaction, a reaction is good. A reaction is good. So if you turn it around to that, where it's like, hey, if this is really bad, we're gonna have something to talk about, or would you rather just watch it and it be mediocre or boring? And it's like, there's really nothing to talk about because there were no redeemingly good or bad qualities. It was just there, So
yeah. So moving on to obviously your great podcast, Between Two Beards. Yeah. How do you connect with Pluggo and start that?
So, oh boy. So I was with Love Wrestling for a little bit at the time. And we were hitting up Mania Week, and it was Mania Week for 2019. So the year before, right? No, were we in 2022? No, it was 2020. So it was Mania Week of 2020. So the COVID year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wanted to say it was before that, but we've only done.
What was on the card? I might be able to help.
Oh my God, I don't even remember. What was the main event of the year before they went away? Then COVID happened.
The year before.
Yeah, 29. Yeah, so 2019, the main
Was
event was
Becky, Ronda,
yeah,
Charlotte?
at Mania in New York. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
went to that one. So it was 2020. It was the year after that.
Okay.
So we had just Love Wrestling started on January 1st, 2020. I had come on around February. And Mania was happening, and that was the week. Obviously, COVID kind of changed some stuff, but like that was the year where there were just a lot of things happening. There was obviously a Raw, a SmackDown, NXT. They had all this stuff, and at Love Wrestling, we were kind of we wanted to bring more people on. We wanted more
Yeah.
people, you know. And Pluggo was just one of those guys where I had nothing to do with Pluggo at all. He just came on for extra content. And we did a reaction show together. So we did a reaction show together, and I just liked our vibe. Like I felt like we didn't really like it wasn't one of those things where we were like agreeing on everything or saying the same thing, but we had a really good rapport. There were like 4 or 5 of us. But when him and I were chatting with each other, or I just liked his opinions, I liked his delivery, I just liked his vibe. I just thought it was somebody that I was like, if I knew this person, I think we'd be friends. That type of thing. And then that was really it. And then I was doing my own stuff at the time, but then a couple months passed and he wasn't really doing anything besides like hopping on a reaction show or something like that. And I just reached out to him and I was like, hey man, like I kind of like your style. I felt like the couple times we did a react show together, we had a good back and forth, you and I. So like, if you have any ideas, like let me know. Like I definitely love to work with you. And that was really it. And then he messaged me back and he was like, yeah, dude, like feel the same. And then we just kind of talked about what we wanted the show to be. He was like, we should definitely do something beard related because you got a big beard and my beard is all right, but you got a really big beard. I'm like, all right,
I've got some
whatever.
beard questions later, by the way.
Oh yeah. So then we came up with Between Two Beards. We ran it by Spencer, and then that was really it. And then now, like Pluggo's one of my best friends. I talk to Pluggo almost every day. I've never met him in person, but like I talk to Pluggo almost every day. We're constantly coming up with ideas of like bits we can run or what are we going to talk about on the show, draft ideas. But like, that's all it was I was basically just like, I think I like this guy. Let me just kind of went from there.
So you mentioned about not meeting in person yet. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
If COVID never happened, do you think you'd be doing the podcast?
Oh boy. I think so. Because I think technically by the time I joined Love Wrestling, COVID still wasn't a thing. It was weeks away. So I joined and the way that I joined was like I was a contestant on Quizplex. I answered a question on Twitter. They reached out to me and were like, you want to be on a trivia show? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, that sounds good to me. Trivia show, sharing some beers, wrestling trivia. Yeah, why not? And it was a random night. I finished second. I lost, which still, I'm super competitive. So like, it still bothers me to this day that I finished second. I should have won, but I lost. And I was like, you know what? I've been watching wrestling my whole life, basically. I like to talk. I went to school for radio and television broadcasting. Like, that was why I went to college. I've done internships at radio stations locally near Boston, where I'm from. I was like, why not? So I literally, like, Spencer messaged me the day after and was like, hey man, that was a lot of fun last night. Like, thanks for being a part of it. And in my brain, I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. Like, what's the point? Like, why wouldn't I do this?
Yeah, definitely.
So I openly was like, hey man, that was a lot of fun. Like, this is something I've always kind of wanted to do. I have like some little bit of background with like radio and TV and, so I was just like, if you're ever looking for like a guest host for a pick'em show or just whatever, let me know. Yeah. I just figured what if he says no, whoop-de-doo, I'm still living the same. Nothing's changing. I'm still living the same life.
Definitely.
And then all of a sudden he messaged me back and he was like, hell yeah, dude. Like, let's set up a Zoom talk. We can talk about it. And like 3 days later, he was asking me to like be a part of Love Wrestling, like not like fill in, but he was like, no, dude, if you want to do this, like you should come up, like be a part of us. And I was like, why would I say no to that? Why would I absolutely say no to that? So, I mean, to answer your question, I do feel like if COVID didn't happen, no, I still feel like we would have somehow ended up doing it. Cause I'm pretty sure Pluggo would have popped on for Mania week, no matter what. So I do think the stars would have aligned that we we still would have been doing it. But I definitely think the COVID circumstances of how that mania turned out and things like that definitely put us in a situation where Pluggo and I were probably put together maybe sooner than things might have happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe your role on Between Two Bids, and how would you describe Pluggo's role?
I think Pluggo is okay. Pluggo is the brain of Between Two. Like a lot of the skits, a lot of the funny stuff we do, those are initial ideas most of the time by Pluggo. So Pluggo's the guy that's like, hey, I have an idea. He'll tell me the idea. And then I go, okay, I like that, but what if we do this as well? And then it becomes what you see. You know what I mean? So I feel like, and Pluggo, he always says, he's like, you're the guy that steers the ship. You steer the ship type of thing. And I feel like that's how it is. I feel like I feel like Pluggo, like social media, our social media game, all that, like that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have. I mean, I have something to do with it, but that's really like Pluggo's that guy. Pluggo is the promoter. He's the guy that comes up with the off the wall draft ideas, the off the wall bits where we're challenging other wrestlers to fights on the show, and like,
wow,
that's all Pluggo. And but like we're very collaborative. So like I said, Pluggo comes up with the idea, he throws it at the wall, and then I catch it, and I'm like, okay, this is a really good idea. But what if we tighten it up a little bit by doing this? And then it's like, hell yeah, that's what we're doing. And so that's kind of how it works. So I feel like, and these are Pluggo's words, and I know you're talking to him soon, so you could probably ask him too. But like I feel like I'm the guy that steers the ship, and Pluggo's Pluggo's the guy that, I mean, it's hard to explain, but I feel like Pluggo's the more creative one of the two of us, but I'm the one that's more like, I can reel him in when I need to reel him in. And I'm the one that has like, before a show when we're brainstorming, Pluggo has all these ideas, right? And I'm like, okay. And I'm the one that's like, all right, we're going to talk about this here, and then we're going to go to here, and then so like, I'm kind of the organization, I would think, the organization kind of like, and Pluggo's more of the creative / coming up with ideas. Like a lot of our guests that we get, Pluggo has more connections in that world than I do. So like Pluggo's really does a lot of groundwork to get the stuff we do every week and get that in motion. And then I'm kind of the fine tuner, I would say. I'm kind of the fine tuner.
So with you both having very different roles in your own words, do you think Between Two Beards would work if one of you decided, I need to step away?
I mean, I think him and I are both aligned that if something were to happen where one of us had to leave or step away for a long period of time, I don't think we would do the show. Probably, I would say. Like there's been times where I've had like a vacation, a holiday or whatever, and I've missed a week, and Pluggo has got a guest host and things like that. And things have been they're more than fine. Those episodes are still great and fun and things like that. But I think him and I are both kind of aligned, and we've said it like, when we're having our off-air private chats, we've said it like, we're in this together. You know what I mean? If one of us goes up and blows up, we're taking the other one with us. Or if one of us has to go away, then like Beards is done. You know what I mean? Like we would probably still try to stay in this space and maybe do something different. But I feel like Between Two Beards is JPJ and Pluggo. That's what it is. And without one, there really isn't. It's not Between Two Beards anymore. So I feel like if Pluggo was all of a sudden tomorrow was like, hey man, I got to stop doing this because of this, or I got to step away for 6 months or whatever, it'd be like, okay, well, like Beards is going on hiatus then for 6 months. Like I'll figure something else out. Maybe I'll still do something on Thursday nights at 8:00, but it ain't going to be Between Two Beards. It'll be something else,
Totally. So with Between Two Bids and stuff, like when you do record, what is like your routine to get in the zone to go live? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I would say Pluggo and I usually will get in like we usually try to be in a room like this with us like at least a half hour before where and again we talk every day. So
Mm.
like today's, we're recording this on a Monday right
Mm.
now, Monday, yeah. So we'll chat tonight during Raw. We'll chat tonight. Tomorrow we'll start. Hey, what do you think? What are the things you want to talk about on Thursday? Like, what's the one or two things that you definitely want to talk about? All right,
Mm.
well, here are the one or two things that I definitely want to talk about. Okay, cool. And then Wednesday, it might be like, all right, so we have 3 or 4 things that we definitely want to talk about. Obviously, we're going to recap, not full recaps, but we're going to talk a little bit about what happened on Raw, a little
Mm.
bit of what happened on Dynamite, any news that breaks. And I feel like Thursdays, for some reason, are big wrestling news days. So, like, I
It
feel like
seems
there's,
to be like the podcast curse because that seems to be when
yeah,
everyone's recording podcasts. It's like
shit hits the fan.
during most podcasts, you normally see like is a disclaimer the right word? Where you go, this
Yeah.
podcast was recorded before blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
you're like,
100%.
that's why, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been times like we go live. So we go live at usually live for anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Mm.
And there's been times on air, like when we were on air, and again, this is not one of the good stories that broke when we were on air, but when we were on air one night and like right in the middle of our show, WWE did like another huge round of layoffs. And it was
Oof.
like right in the middle of it. So we're talking about something else. And then all of a sudden you see people in our chat that are going, oh, this person's released, this person, and then the rest of the show is not according to the plan that we
Mm.
have. We're talking about this. You know what I mean? And I think that's the good part about being live. I think, and Pluggo and I are always huge about incorporating the people in the chat. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So like we're very big on like, hey, if you have something you want to talk about and we're not talking about it, say it in the chat because like we address every comment. Like, and it's not like you have to, not a paid like any comment that you do, we show it on the screen and we address it and we talk about it. So there's been shows where we have an agenda. I would say it's very loose agenda, but we have an
Yeah.
agenda that we want to try to follow. But then all of a sudden the chat's popping off about one thing we're talking about. And instead of talking about that thing for 10 minutes like we have planned, it's 40 minutes of our show, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like we're really good at navigating that and kind of transitioning and making it all work. So it looks like we had that all under control, even though the chat and our viewers are the ones that are like, no, we want to, they kind of kept us there for longer than we had originally intended. But for me, yeah, I always get jacked up. Like I'm jacked up every day, but like I'm jacked up on Thursdays. Like I'll message Pluggo in the morning, like gonna have a good one tonight, bro. Like let's go.
Mm.
What are we talking about? What do you want to draft? What are we doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then we have usually like a final plan set by probably midday Thursday. And then we meet up about a half hour before, me, Pluggo, and our producer Alex, who really, does all the graphics and the music and puts up the comments, that type of thing. And we just say, hey, any other things we want to fit in here, any things we want to do, blah, 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 any fun ideas to like rag on Spencer or rag on these people or whatever. But yeah, no, and then we're pretty good. We get ourselves a little hyped up. We just have a good time, just connect about life and whatever. And then when it's like 2 minutes to go, Alex says, all right, boys. Like he says the same thing. All right, boys. And me and Pluggo, we just kind of go, ready? All right, let's go. And then when our music's hitting, you can see us like in our little corners, like bouncing to the music, like ready to go. Let's go.
I
And
thought I
then
was the only one that did that.
no, I do that all the time. Like you'll see, like I'm in the corner, you can't hear me or anything like that, but I'm like in this zone, like stretching, like let's go after it. The music go very much pop punk emo kids through. So yeah, like stuff like that, and you can see us ready. And then once the camera's on, we just go. So
Mm. So what about calming down after a stream? Do you have anything in place to be like, okay, I need to go back to civilian life now?
yeah, usually I just play video games, to be honest with you. So usually after the show, it's not like we just like immediately leave, but like Pluggo, Alex and I, or Pluggo and I, we'll chat, we'll come up with, we'll talk about any real, just life stuff, catch up. We'll talk about any ideas we have maybe down the line for like a few weeks down the road, or like ideas or guests or things like that. But then after that, I'm usually just flipping on some video games, just kind of decompressing a little bit. Um, I do that a lot. Like when I come home from work, usually like the shoot job, usually my first couple hours are, throwing on MLB The Show, or throwing on FIFA, or throwing on something and playing some video games just to kind of relax my mind and get in the zone about something else. And then I feel like that's just how I kind of come down from it. Like the show ends and I'm like, all right, that was a good one. I feel good about that. And then really I'm just either that or I'm throwing on a record and the record player out in the living room, and I'm just kind of chilling, watching TV or whatever. But I like to, once I get home from the day, whether it's from the shoot job or if I'm doing a show and I'm done the show, I very much like a chill atmosphere. I'm a very chill person in general. But I like a chill atmosphere. So like, a good record and a beer, or like, sometimes, or just playing video games and relaxing the brain for a few, like that's usually my wheelhouse.
Go to beer, go to record, and go to video game.
Oh my God. All right. So my go-to video game right now, even though baseball season's coming to an end, is MLB The Show. Is probably the game I play the most. I just love it. It's been the longest running video game that I play. I've been playing it for years and years and years. So that's the game I play the most. My favorite video game of all time, though, is Kingdom Hearts, which is I'm a Disney sucker. I am. So like it's like, RPG with Disney characters and Disney worlds and shit. Like it's just amazing. Beer though, okay. So this is going to be tough, but there is a local brewery in Massachusetts. If anybody is if anybody is a craft beer or just a beer person that likes good beer, and you're in New England or you're in Massachusetts, there is a brewery named Treehouse Brewing Company. In my opinion, they are the best brewery in the country. I am biased, but it is my opinion. They have a beer that's called Julius. It's their flagship beer. It's a double IPA, but they have a beer called Julius, and that was the first beer that I had always heard, like, you got to go try Treehouse. You got to go try Treehouse. They're really good. They make like crazy good beer. I'm like, all right. I was like, okay, yeah. So I went and I had a Julius, and Julius was the first beer that when I started drinking it, it changed my perception of what beer could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like beer was always like, oh, this tastes pretty good, but you're going to get a little tipsy, a little liquored up, and like, oh, this like IPAs, like, and this is not a knock on these, but like IPAs like Sculpin or Harpoon or all these, those were the only IPAs I knew. So they were like, oh, these are pretty good, but like they're not anything crazy. And then you have a Julius and you're like, this tastes like juice. Like, what am I doing here? This tastes like I'm drinking orange juice, but it's an 8% beer. Like, what is this? Yeah, exactly. So like they make stuff that like, and again, in at least in the States, and craft beer is a thing that has blown up over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
It's a thing over here. It is.
Yeah, I would assume. Yeah. So it's definitely blown up everywhere. So there's breweries making really good stuff all over the place now. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Treehouse is the only good brewery in the world, because it's not true. But at the same time, they make stuff that you taste and you're like, this doesn't even taste like beer. It feels like I'm not drinking a beer, like I'm cheating, So, but that's what I would say. And then favorite record. Well, right now there's a band called Turnstile. Everyone should go listen to Turnstile. They released a new album last year. It's called Glow On. They're actually, so Blink-182, right? They just made their big comeback announcement last week. Turnstile is the main band that's on that tour with them. So Turnstile, which I'm very happy for Turnstile, because they're going to get a lot of eyes on them. They're fantastic. And I kind of call them like groovy punk, but they're like a little bit, they're not like, they're aggressive at times, but then they're chill and groovy, but they're very much like skater, like surfer skater vibes at times. They're very good. They hit all different boxes of types of music. But if you never heard of Turnstile, the album is called Glow On. They released it late last year. It's very good. I would recommend that everyone go check that record out, because that is the one that I've been listening to nonstop for like probably like we're talking 6-7 months at this point. That's my go-to record.
What do you do then? Because we've all had those days where we've listened to a song over and over again, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
all of a sudden your brain just goes, why do I continue to listen to this? If you know what I mean. Like your brain just goes, like, we've listened to this enough. What do you do
Yeah.
in those situations then?
Oh man. I usually just switch it up. I mean, I have it's very weird. Like I'm one of the, and I don't know if it's the way my old schoolness or the way I was raised, but like I'm one of those people that when I listen to music or I listen to bands, I listen to records. So like
Mm.
I'm very much, I'm not like, oh, I want to listen to Turnstile today, so let me just throw on a shuffle of Turnstile. I'm one of those people that's like, oh, I feel like I want to listen to Turnstile today. What album of theirs am I going to listen to? You know what I
Ooh.
mean? That's
Yeah.
how I listen to music. So and I know we live in a world where, you know, Spotify, Apple Music, where I feel like a lot of people now, the way that music is digested is very much not that way. I
Mm.
feel like it's very much single based, you know, like, oh, these are the songs that are on the radio, these are the singles, these are the I feel like more people know bands by their songs than they do their records nowadays, if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying there
Yeah, and
because
I
I'm
feel
going to
like
be totally honest. There's
yeah,
bands that I'm like, I couldn't tell you an album they've made, but I could tell
yeah.
you a song.
Exactly. And I feel like that's a lot of people, though. I feel like
Mm.
that's a lot of people. Just because everything is so easily accessible now.
Mm.
We got, you know, we used to have Discmans and Walkmans and go to the record store and buy a
Yeah.
cassette or buy a CD. Now, oh, this new album just came out yesterday. Let me open an app on my phone that took me 10 seconds to open and let me listen to this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's so easily accessible that I feel like a lot of people operate that way when it comes to music. Like my favorite band of all time is a band called Brand New. They're my favorite band of all time. I If people ask me what song should I listen to from Brand New, I look at them and I go, no, you got to listen to this album. Like listen to this album.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I just feel like a lot of people just don't operate that way anymore. So like in a situation like that, where if I'm listening to Turnstile and I'm like, okay, I've listened to this album on repeat 4 times today. So let's do something else. I'll just kind of shift it. My music, I probably should be more open-minded about the music that I like. Um, but like I very much stay in the alternative pop punk, screamo, metal. I'm very much in the more aggressive music is what I like.
Yeah.
Um, so one of my favorite bands, and it's not even because of the wrestling aspect of it, but and they're no longer around. R.I.P. They quit as a band earlier this year after they released what arguably I think might be their best record, but was a band called Every Time I Die,
Yeah.
and the Butcher from AEW is the lead guitarist of that band, and I love that band. And like so like they're another one of those bands that they have 10 records or whatever, and I can listen to any one of them at any given time for the thousandth time and I just don't get sick of it.
Mm.
So if I ever run into a situation where I'll just pivot and I'll just be like, all right, let's go see what's up. I am from Boston, which is a very sports heavy town, and I'm
Yeah.
a very heavy person as well. Um, so I do find sometimes where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of listening to music, or I need a break from music, or I'm tired of listening to this. I'll just throw on sports radio as well and just
Ah.
kind of listen to sports radio, listen to whoever's running the show complain about whatever game just happened or something like that. So I feel like I'm very much a sports radio, and then whatever band I'm in the mood for, then that specific moment. Like that's usually how I operate back and forth.
Fair dues. So when it comes to wrestling, are you very similar with that? Like when it comes to like, if you're like, I'm burned out of wrestling, I'm gonna watch this the next day instead of staying up for it, for example.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if I had a long day at work and I'm tired and I know, hey, on the East Coast, so you know, I know it's worse for you guys over there, but I'm on the East Coast, so like these shows are on until 10, 11, sometimes later at night.
Yeah.
And I work in the coffee industry as the shoot job. Coffee shops open at like 4 or 5 in the morning over here.
Oof.
Early mornings. So I think my cat might be joining us in a second. He looks like he's going to try to jump on this table right now. But it's one of those things where there he is. There he is. This is
Hi.
Lou. Hey, Lou. Doing an interview, bud. So it's one of those things where if I'm never not in the mood to watch wrestling, but if I know that I'm tired or I have something else I have to do or something else like that I need to do, I like tonight, perfect example. Tonight, this is a Monday Night Raw is on tonight. However, I'm a big football fan, and the New England Patriots, my team that I support, is playing on the Monday Night Football game. So I'm not watching Raw tonight. I'm watching the Patriots play Monday Night Football. And when I get home from work tomorrow afternoon, that's when I'm going to watch Monday Night Raw. So like I can do that, and I feel like I kind of operate that way too. If I come home and it's like, I really don't feel like, I'm tired. I just got home. Like I kind of just want to chill. I don't want to watch Raw for the next 3 hours. Like I'd rather just chill and then go to bed or that. Like I will just pivot and I'll be like, I'll watch, or maybe I'll watch the first hour of Raw and then I'll finish it tomorrow or something like that. So, it's the good thing about wrestling and about the world we live in now with DVR and stuff like that. Like I know my show isn't until Thursday. So like I don't have to wake up on Tuesday and talk about Raw. I'm gonna talk about Raw a couple days from now. So I know I have that little bit of buffer where if I got to take care of some stuff or I just need a break or just a night to maybe hang out with my girlfriend or hang out with some friends or whatever, I can make sure that I've watched Raw and I'm good to go by Thursday, So it kind of gives me the freedom, the flexibility and the freedom to kind of pick and choose if I need a night where I'm like, you know what? Not tonight. We'll get it tomorrow,
You mentioned your girlfriend there, and this will bring me into some beard questions as we look at wrapping this up. If you were told the beard's got to go, would that be something you'd be interested in, and do you think you'd have to rename your show if that was the case?
Well, yeah. If the beard were to go, 100%, you got to rename the show, 100%. But I can tell you this: the beard would never go. So that's just I'm 37 years old. I've had this beard since I was like 20. Obviously, it wasn't always this color, but I've had this beard the majority of my life, and even like before I was old enough or whatever to grow something like this. Like I always had facial hair. Part of that was me being chubby. I grew up as a chubby kid, so facial hair was an easy way to hide the double chin, the chubbiness underneath. So like it was just an easy way to kind of make that, whatever. And then it got to the point where like the beard kind of just became part of who I was. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to grow this out. And I didn't grow it out particularly like, oh, I want to have this big beard. Part of it was just laziness. I just didn't want to shave. I was just like, I feel comfortable. I don't want to shave. It's a chore. I don't want to do that. I work for a company that allows me to have beard and they're not sticklers about it. Even though I work with coffee and in the food, like they're cool with it.
Have to have a head. So for the beard.
A couple times it's been brought like, oh, you might have to get a beard net. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll fight you to the death. That's a thing over here. Now, I don't have to do it. Knock on wood. I don't have to do it.
Wow.
But beard nets are a thing over here. 100%.
Oh, okay.
I have never been in a scenario where I've needed one. And if I was ever put in a scenario where I needed one, I would try to fight it to the death before I had to wear it. But at the end of the day, if I had to, I would. I'd follow the rules. I wouldn't be happy about it though. But I can say that the beard would never go. I can say that with confidence that I don't think the beard would ever go. If it ever got to a situation where my job was like, you need to shave your beard or you can't work here anymore, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to look for other jobs. Like, because if I can't work for you because of a beard, then you're not a company I want to be working for anyway.
Yeah,
what the hell are we talking about?
I think that says something more about the company than it does.
Yeah, what are we talking about? Like, so that's how my mentality about it goes.
Fair. So as we look at wrapping this up, because I do want to be respectful of your time, we're going to do a quick segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have
All right.
seen my interviews before will know this where I ask my guests their favorite match, favorite pay-per-view, favorite wrestler's theme, favorite tag team, and favorite uh, wrestler or superstar of all time. Basically, questions
Okay.
that JPJ might get asked on social media quite regularly. So now he'll have a place to be like, look, guys, I've answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
Yeah. Oh my God. My favorite match of all time is Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13.
Why does that one speak to you?
1A though, because I love this match almost equally is Bayley and Sasha from Brooklyn.
Why do those
But
two speak to you?
I personally, and again, I haven't watched every match from all time, so like, it is what it is. But I personally like the Stone Cold Bret Hart match from WrestleMania was some of, if not the greatest storytelling in a match that I've ever seen. I've ever seen. That was a perfectly executed double turn to the point where Stone Cold Steve Austin was made a star. Like Bret Hart did so much in making Stone Cold who he was. Hi, Lou. And making Stone Cold who he was. And that match was the epitome of it. Because Stone Cold went in there as still the badass bad guy, and Bret Hart was still the good guy. And by the end of that match, that crowd was booing Bret Hart out of the building, and they were giving Stone Cold a standing ovation when he was walking bloody to the back. You know what I mean? And I feel like that match was just perfectly told. So that's why that one. And then the Bayley Sasha thing. Sasha Banks is so good in that match as a heel. It is insane how good she is. That point where Bayley has the submission on her and Sasha is just kicking her fingers as she's reaching to the rope on her broken hand is one of the most dastardly things. I remember seeing it in that moment, whatever year it was now, 2014, whatever
15,
year it was,
I think.
2015. I remember seeing that and being like, oh my God, I don't think I've ever, that's gruesome. Like, I don't think, when was the last time I saw something that that bad, heelish?
Yeah.
And just the whole story of Bayley having to go through all of those women, go through Becky, go through Charlotte, and then Sasha was the last one. And that story of Bayley kind of being the little sister of the four that wasn't quite there, but then had to go through all of them. And just that moment in Brooklyn with that crowd, man, just the storytelling of those two matches from the in-ring storytelling, not because the stories leading into it were good too, but the in-ring storytelling, like just superior.
Favorite pay-per-view of all time?
I mean, SummerSlam 92 is up there. SummerSlam 92 in Wembley is up there. That's probably the pay-per-view I've watched the most. But other than that, I would say WrestleMania 17 is probably. I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite Mania. TLC, everything. Like, it's just such a good Mania. But I would say probably WrestleMania 17 is probably my number one.
That's a common answer, but why does that speak to you?
The TLC match and Edge's spear. And I know these are videos and matches we've seen 1,000 times and they're in the lore forever, but that match, I think, changed the way that everyone viewed tag team wrestling. And I love tag team wrestling. Tag team wrestling is probably my favorite form of wrestling. And I feel like at the time, those were the three best tag teams on the planet that were given 20 minutes to go out there and just show the world what you can do. And yeah, that match sticks out to me a lot. I actually think, a lot of people talk about the McMahon part of the Austin Rock match. But I honestly think that before all that went down, that was Austin and Rock's best Mania match. And that, in my opinion, is the best feud of that's one of the best rivalries of all time. They're the only people to main event three of them, or or wrestle three of them, I should say. And everyone remembers that moment when Austin went with McMahon. Everyone, whether you liked it or you didn't, or whether it worked or it didn't, that's the moment forever. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's a lot more that I'm not talking about at WrestleMania X7 that was really good, but the TLC match is what
I think that just shows you how good that show is, though.
is
The
so
fact
good.
that
It's
we
from
only
top to
spoke
bottom,
about
like
two
just so
matches on the
good.
card.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, it's the best. I mean, WrestleMania 19, you can make an argument for me that it's also a very, very good WrestleMania. But I
That's
think
mine for
17,
sentimental reasons.
19, yeah,
Yeah.
it's excellent.
Favorite theme song of all time?
Man. Big fan of Evolution. Big
Hmm.
fan of Evolution. Motorhead. I think Evolutions is excellent. I'm going to try not to pick all of Triple H's because they're all
As this
Motorhead.
before
But
we what we'll do in that case then is after you've picked your theme songs, I'll get you to rank all of the Motorhead songs.
okay, that's fair. That's fair. I also think for me, an early theme song. I mean, when Hogan was coming out to Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, and he was doing the belt, the NWO belt, I thought that entrance, the song, and I know it's a real song that he uses a wrestling theme, but I thought that whole entrance was also very, very good. That's one that sticks out to me a lot as well.
Just quickly, because you brought up real songs being used in wrestling, what's your thoughts on that? Super quickly.
What was my what?
What's your thoughts on?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
For example, Jungle Boy using Tarzan Boy.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it all. CM Punk using Cult of Personality, another one. Like,
I don't know why that one didn't pop straight in my head. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Because like I get it. Wrestling themes are different, and they have people that make them and stuff like that. And there are great wrestling themes that were strictly made for wrestling. But I love the using real bands to make theme songs or using real songs. Like, what are some of the like Edge's theme song? Like, that's a real band that does that. You know what I mean? Batista's theme song, which I think is another great theme song. Saliva. Like, I'm all for Bray Wyatt, right? The last two songs, even this new one, has been done by a band named Code Orange, who is a very good band. Were they are they real Code Orange songs, or were they specifically made for Bray Wyatt? Whatever. I mean, either way, fine. But like, I'm all for using real bands and real songs as themes because they're recognizable. You hear Cult of Personality, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, if you're a music fan and you hear that at a wrestling event, you're like, oh, I know that song. Like, I know that song. I've heard this song before. It's been on the radio my whole life. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
You brought that up. Someone I know, when I'm watching wrestling, if they hear that while I'm watching it, they're like, yeah, I'm going to watch this for a few minutes just because they love 100%. That song.
Yeah. And like, I remember, like, I was an ECW kid, right? So I remember ECW when they first started, they all used regular songs. Like, RVD came out to Walk by Pantera. Like, that was his song.
Not legally, if I
No, it wasn't legally.
If I understand.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I can imagine Heyman was not legally paying for the rights of those songs. But like, like Raven had an Offspring song as his entrance. You know what I mean? Like, and it was it just, if you know the songs, it kind of, like you said, you can not be a wrestling fan, but you go, oh, I know that song. That's this guy's song. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to sit and watch this. I'm going to sit and watch this because I know that song. That's a cool song, so.
And then before we do your favorite tag team and favorite wrestler of all time, rank the Triple H Motorhead songs for me.
This might shake some heads here, but I'm going Evolution number 1, King of Kings number 2, and
I love King of Kings. So underrated.
It's so good. It's so good. And The Game, Triple H, is 3. Those are the 3 for me. Are there more? Is there more than 3?
Not that I can think them, right? Of. Yeah. I think so. I'm going to get gutted in the comments for that.
Yeah, so I go Evolution. So. Yeah, Evolution, King of Kings, The Game. Time to play the game, whatever you want to call it.
Honestly, I think I might agree with your ranking.
King of Kings is incredible.
I love Evolution, though. That is an underrated gem.
It's so good. It's so good. That line where he says, I see the line in the sand, like the way it's just perfect. Like the music, it like kicks into another gear, and he like prolongs. Then he almost has like an echo to his voice when he says it, and it's like it's so good. And like that little guitar riff that into the intro when it's just like bam, and it all hits. Great theme song. Great theme song.
100% agree. So, who are your favorite tag team of all time? As tag team wrestling is your favorite?
It is. Well, when I was a kid, it was Demolition. When I was a kid, I loved Demolition. But I would say favorite tag team of all time are the Dudley Boys. Love the Dudley Boys. I was an ECW kid. And then to see them get the success that they did in WWE and become, do they still, I don't know if the New Day's beating them in times, but do they still have the most tag team wins for championship wins for a tag? I'm pretty sure they still do.
All I know is the New Day's beaten
their like
length record.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like times, I think the Dudleys still have the most. Sure. But yeah, no, I think the Dudleys were always my team. And those triple threat days, I liked all three of those teams, but the Dudleys were always the team that I was pulling for. So I would say, yeah, the Dudley Boys, and then current day, and I know I'm probably one of a million, but there's nobody better than FTR. Nobody, in my opinion.
Who wins, Dudley Boys or FTR?
FTR. I think when all is said and done, FTR will go down as the greatest tag team in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I agree, but just
because I think they're going to go back to WWE at some point because they were definitely Hunter's guys. He made NXT Black and Gold gave a crap about tag team wrestling. Some of the best tag team matches you'll ever see were the Revival and DIY and the Authors of Pain and all the like those incredible matches. I do think eventually FTR ends up going back to WWE at some point and they have a proper revival, no pun intended. But they have a proper, but they have a proper comeback. And then I think they're going to be presented as the best tag team in the world on WWE at some point down the line again. I just think, I firmly believe that by the time they're done and they are retired, they will be considered as the best tag team in the history of wrestling.
They already are for me personally.
And that's part of it for me. They kind of already are too. So, yeah.
So, and then finally, as we wrap this up, who is your favorite wrestler or superstar of all time?
Macho Man, always.
I thought
Macho Man is one, and and Stone Cold is 1A. Stone Cold can kind of do no wrong to me either.
I asked you about who would win in a match between Macho and Austin. No, I asked you about FTR and Dudley. But flipping that question, who wins, Austin or Macho Man?
What a match that would be, huh? If only we could see it. I'll go with Austin. Austin was he was the most over guy in the history of everything, wasn't he? So, like, do I think in ring? I think Macho Man is a better in ring wrestler than Steve Austin. But Steve Austin, when he was at his height with Stone Cold, you're talking both his knees were already gone, broken neck. He was like trash. His neck was trash. Like, so like, I feel like if a lot of people saw the in-ring work of stunning Steve Austin and early Steve Austin, that he could hang with Macho Man in ring a lot more.
But definitely.
Yes. But I would say, in my opinion, Stone Cold is the biggest wrestler of all time from a popularity standpoint, like ever. So I would go with Austin, but I would still be Macho Man's my dude. So I would be rooting for the Macho Man, but I think Austin would probably prevail in that fight.
I think I agree, but part of me would, I would just want to say that, to be honest. But
oh my God,
the question I end all my interviews on is with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very strange way. So what is one piece of content that you want to be remembered for? And then what is one that you're like, if you could get rid of that, I would appreciate it.
I would be very happy if people remembered me for what me and Pluggo are doing with beards, to be honest with you. we have fun. We just try to have fun. And I think that's why people kind of like watching our show is like, yeah, we talk about wrestling. Yeah, we do all this stuff. But like at the end of the day, I think people are drawn to it because we like to have fun. We want to have fun. We don't want to talk about all the other things that every other wrestling podcast is talking about. We don't want to. We want to be our own thing. We want to do stupid skits, like we want to do stuff like that. So I would definitely want to be remembered for Between Two Beards. But in general, I am a Boston Red Sox fan. I live near Boston, and I do not like the New York Yankees. And there is somewhere on the interwebs you can find like a 6 or 7 minute clip of me where I'm going off on the New York Yankees because they retired a number of a guy who was not even that good of a player. And we were talking about baseball randomly, and I just kind of went off, just saying how much that guy didn't deserve to have his number retired.
Oh wow!
And I was just I used it as a reason to kind of rag on the Yankees because that's they're my arch rival of my team.
It's the
So like,
equivalent of say England. Like I, my dad's a Tottenham fan, so it's like Tottenham and Arsenal, right?
I was going to say Arsenal. I know the EPL a little bit, so I was going to say Arsenal and Tottenham don't like each other.
Not at all.
Yeah, like Liverpool and Chelsea don't like each other. So like it's one of those things where that's what it's like. The Red Sox Yankees is very much like that. Like last night, the Yankees got eliminated. They were not playing the Red Sox. The Red Sox stunk this year. They didn't even make the playoffs. But when the Yankees got eliminated last night, I was like, yeah, like see you later. Like doing, like one of those things. Yeah, but there's like a 6.5, 7 minute release somewhere on Between Two Beards Twitter. Completely just going in on the Yankees about how low times are in New York that they retired. The gentleman's name was Paul O'Neill. Fine, an okay baseball player, not an average baseball player, but he doesn't belong in Monument Park with Babe Ruth and with those guys back there. So I kind of just went to town. So that's a funny one that I think like if people remembered me for that would make me laugh. As far as one that people would remember before that I would be like, oh God, I hope not. I don't think I've made anything that I regret like that yet. Knock on wood. Hopefully don't. I'm sure I've had a couple takes that I thought were going to happen that were just dreadful that did not happen, but I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this up, where can the good people find you and or your content?
Yeah. So you can find Between Two Beards, like my content, most of it. You can find me over at Love Wrestling. It's at Love Wrestling CA, as in Canada, because it's based out of Canada. Every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, myself and Pluggo have Between Two Beards. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Joseph_Poulin Jr. And then you can follow me on Twitch at JPJ Loves Gaming. I've been streaming video games for, 3 or 4 months now, built a little bit of a good community over there. We play sports games. We play fun, like, regular video games, RPGs, things like that. So that's really where you can find me is over on the Twitter machine and really Twitch. And then you can find Between Two Beers and any of the other wrestling type shows I do over on Love Wrestling.
It's well worth doing, guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash. Follow bodyslam.net wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube for my show with Cassidy Haynes, the Wrestle Watch podcast. And I will see you in the next video. A goodbye.